Hey, friends, and welcome to Heartful Beings, where we bring loving, grounded, and practical perspectives to living a heart-centered life with Janet Uribe and Milena Rodriguez.
This is the place where we will explore all things spiritual with an open heart while keeping our feet on the ground. We share experiences, bring in special guests, and have open-hearted conversations about all things spiritual.
If you are new or open to expansion, spiritual principles, and universal truths, then we may be kindred spirits.
All we ask is that you take what resonates, nourish your soul, and just leave the rest behind. Hello, our beautiful friends, and welcome to another episode of Heartful Beings. My name is Milena Rodriguez, and this is the beautiful, talented, and amazing friend of mine, Janet Uribe. How are you doing today, Janet?
I am so good. And when you told me today's topic, I immediately, my body started shaking. I'm like, oh, girl, this is it. This is what all of the clients have been talking about. And you're like, yeah, mine too. They're all in the same thing. And I love it because, we go through versions of this over years to then be equipped to help those. So girl, take it. Come on, bring it.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm a little tired today. Have not been sleeping in this pregnancy, which is very different than my last pregnancy. So I'm gonna be pretty honest with y'all there. And my daughter has not been sleeping well, but I will say it's been on theme. Me and Janet, of course, we always do a little chit chat before we start recording, and we just see these patterns. And the biggest pattern, which I think we're going to probably spend maybe a couple of weeks, is relationships, right? This is where we talked last episode about relationships with people, with friends, with money, with ourselves. And today we're really going to get into the boundaries and the ownership. So many of the clients lately have been experiencing a little bit more chaos, right? Or they're developing a little bit more of an awareness. So they're starting to see the patterns, and then they're like, oh shit, what do I do with this information now? Everyone talks about, oh, set a boundary, set a boundary. What does that mean? What is a boundary? And I think the biggest thing that I've come to realize is boundaries are more stable when we have done the work beforehand to know why do we need the boundary, and we've taken ownership of what we brought to that relationship that has caused some of the chaos. Not blaming and not saying that it's all our fault or that it's all the fault of the person who has wronged us, okay? Because there is wisdom in knowing what we have brought to the table, how we have reacted or not reacted. So that, Janet, let's elaborate on that. What is a boundary? What does it look like to you in your life? And what does it mean when you've taken ownership in your relationship?
Boundaries has so many different meanings and depths to it, because also semantically, it's going to mean something a little different to every one of us that are listening. Right. Mm-hmm. But over the last couple of years, I would say the biggest thing, my most simple definition about a boundary, is really about honoring self. Mm-hmm. However, if you don't know yourself, you cannot honor a boundary for yourself. So, and then in addition to that, there's a whole other layer, right? We're taught to use the heart, that heartfulness, we're taught to use it for others. So similarly, if you don't know yourself and you're not using the heartful existence for yourself and loving yourself and knowing that you have enough value and worth to also have the boundary, then you cannot hold another accountable if they break it. Mm-hmm. So we're really talking about how collectively, right, there's so many laws and principles that tie into one thing when we're really looking at a boundary that we want to hold for ourselves to create the world that we want. And one thing that I'm going to explain to you, and you'll hear me talk about this more than just once. My nose is so itchy. I'm so sorry. You're going to hear me talk about this so much, is that the physical reality, God's source energy, whatever you want to call it, is paying attention at all times. So when you permit something to perpetuate and continue and gnaw at you or bite at you, or allow someone to continue to build that wall down, take it down, not building it up, taking it down, hurt, right? You're allowing them in. Then the universe kind of says, okay, Janet's made a decision. The new reality is allow others to take, allow others to build down, allow others to attack, allow others to allow. But when you finally start putting in boundaries, the physical reality listens as well and says, okay, she's made a new decision. She has now chosen to place a boundary. So now we have to honor this new version.
Yes.
this new request. And don't worry, you're going to get tested.
Yeah.
You're going to get tested. And that's okay. That's why we're here. It's just part of the curriculum. It's part of the classroom.
Right. So like, okay, I want to bring this up because this kind of came through when you were talking, is how we get tested. So when we see these patterns, they show up in the relationship, either the intimate relationship, the friendship, the working relationship, and all these different relationships with the money, with the self. So I think the ownership of what we've brought to the table and what the lessons have been learned will help those boundaries be more empowered. Because I think if we don't know the why, or we haven't done some of the work about the relationship, so I'm really going to speak right now, I think, to all of us empaths or super sensitive souls or people that know you're here to like help and be of service, right? There's an old myth that hold on, I lost my train of thought there. So we'll cut this part out. I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, the old myth, the myth that we were talking about was that.
Oh, what it means to be of service. So the myth being that we're here to be of service. This is for all the empaths. This is for all the sensitives, that we have to always be there for those people, that we put ourselves second and we put the others first. You just touched on that, Janet. And that it's selfish to put yourself first. And what we're saying, and what I think spirituality is really moving to, is this idea of empowerment of, you know what, we're here, we matter, we have value, we have worth. And when we do the work around our own self-worth or self-esteem, those relationships that are wronging us, we can then set the boundary in a more powerful, more impactful way, you know, and I think they stick longer because we've made the inner change. If we're just going around trying to set boundaries with the world without doing the inner change, we're focusing so much on the exterior, it's going to keep showing us, like you're saying, the universe is going to keep showing us in the exterior world what the lesson is or what that value that we need to learn is.
Yeah.
But when we've done the inner work and then we set the boundary, there's no wavering. Like, I won't stand for this anymore, or I've made this personal change and now this is just who I am.
Absolutely.
So, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go, let's explain that to some people, that this is a new concept.
Yeah.
So the way that this physical reality comes to, and that this dichotomy, what we signed on to, guys, we signed on to this dichotomy, this reality, to where whatever we have going on inside of ourselves internally is obligated, obligated to show you on the external what is going on the internal. So are people showing up for you? Are they making good efforts for you? You might be showing up for yourself. You might be making good efforts for yourself, your own inner work. Are people blowing shit up all around you? Are they misbehaving? Are they acting up? Are they making bad choices? How are you doing that for you? So there is this principle. It's a universal law of attraction. Whatever you are, comes to you. It doesn't mean that you are exactly that person. It doesn't mean that you have to accept what's happening. It doesn't mean that you get a lot of choice in all of this, but that one principle is truthful, that whatever you are, you will attract. Okay. However you feel, you will attract as well. Yeah. So your thoughts are almost like prayers at all times. You're never disconnected from the universe. You're basically commanding and thinking and creating at all time. So a lot of times, like when there's trauma, and guys, there's various levels of trauma. We can go into that another episode, but when there is trauma, we don't actually realize that we start creating this external reality from the time we are in the womb. Right? And so the brain is so powerful. The mind is so powerful. The heart is so powerful. Okay. That what we think upon, we create more of. Also, what you resist persists. So there's these dynamics that are happening at all time that we, when we decide, oh, that person's a villain, the universe hears, okay, she's decided this person's a villain. And so it is handed over to you on a silver platter, villainhood. Okay. Yeah. So this is where beliefs and paradigms and systems start to get created. And then we find ourselves in these situations where boundaries must suddenly start becoming a way of life, because we had belief systems and paradigms that we literally created into the reality. And now we have to learn to rebalance them.
100%. And that's like the job, like all the time, because we are constantly evolving, right? Most of us constantly evolving. And we talked last episode of like, we kind of go through these slow deaths throughout our life because we are going into the next version of ourselves. And so then we have to do a recalibration. Who doesn't serve me anymore? And it's okay. There's this, I even struggled with this, to be honest. And I have some people in my life who have had this issue too, like being very loyal to somebody. There is such a thing as loving people from far away and sending them nothing but love, joy, and light. But I'm choosing now to not be in the chaotic energy because I don't need that anymore. I don't need that. It's not driving, it's not serving me anymore. So I can release it in an empowered way, not in an avoidant way. Doing the inner work of why doesn't this relationship serve me anymore? What is it about this relationship? Do they bring anything to me to the table, or am I always there for them? Is it a very one-way relationship? I've been explaining to my clients lately the idea that you also brought up about our thoughts. It's like our head is a giant antenna, and it's constantly sending out these signals with everything that we're thinking, and we create. And so being more aware of the thoughts is this idea we brought it with the heartful being, bringing it down into the heart and finding this balance, as opposed to just reliving and recreating and living in the trauma and just putting that out there.
Yeah. And it's incredible because like, we're not taught this. So there are some of you, I promise, that are listening to this today and like, this is wild. Like, that's not, don't you know, they're still the problem.
Yeah.
They're the problem. No, I remember the name of that song that I told you about, Melena, last episode, which was Anti-Hero by Taylor Swift. Okay. Mm-hmm. And she talks about how we're literally making the anti-hero basically the protagonist of our play.
Like we give them the power. Yeah. We give them the power.
The lead role. They are, and this is codependency, friends. If someone outside of you is responsible for how you feel, you are in a codependent dynamic. Mm-hmm. So once you start to release that and you start to make yourself responsible for your own environment, for your own feelings, for your own emotions, for your own actions and inactions, for your own state of being, then you become a lot more powerful. But I mean, the opposite is also true. So the more someone else is responsible for your feelings, for your state of being, for your presence, for how you're going to show up in the world, for what you will or will not do, then you just decided, and the universe will support you in that decision. They are responsible. So yeah, go ahead.
And I want to add a layer to that of when we make the decision without the guilt or the shame is a whole nother level, because for a long time, I knew what was best for me, but I didn't know how to do it without feeling really guilty the next day. Like I felt really good that day. And I was like, I'm setting this boundary. I know why. I know this person doesn't need to be in my life, or I'm just going to give myself some space. And the next day I'm like, oh man, maybe I should call them. Maybe I came off too strong. Maybe, and then we go back into that spiral because I wasn't really setting that boundary with empowerment, with my true inner stuff. So it, not to like, and I didn't like judge myself about it, but I was like, oh, there's more work that needs to be done around this. Let me go further into what's missing before I set this boundary.
Ooh, girl.
Like that's when I really was like, okay, this one's going to feel good and stick,
Dang. Oh my gosh, this is opening a whole, I just had 2 cardinals just fly up as we're talking about this.
Yeah, my dog just came in, so I guess she got excited too.
The energy is moving. Feel it, my friends. Okay, feel it. I feel it penetrating all the pieces of my body. I'm wiggling. I can feel it coming in. And here is why. There are circumstances where the loyalist, we could talk about the empath and the narcissist. It's a really common dynamic on purpose. We could villainize the narcissist, but my friends, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But the narcissist is your greatest friend if you start to use them, because they're there to show you, hey, girlfriend, you didn't put up any boundaries. Hey, boyfriend, or hey, neutral, because I know there's every gender of friends. I honor you, but you have not put up your boundary. I am here to start working that dynamic with you guys. And spirit in our spiritual selves, literally, we're high-fiving. We're like, yeah, you're doing a good job playing that role. Thank you. I'm here to wake up. And like at the end of it, like once you start to wake up, that narcissist doesn't have to keep playing that role. And then spirit selves are like booty bumping. Okay. On the other side, like you did it. However, it's when we are not showing up to do these pieces that we very much came here as part of our curriculum to do, that the test gets bigger, the curriculum gets harder, and so on and so forth, until it's like a massive explosion and you have no option but to do this type of work.
So let's talk about that, because I think we touched on this also in the very beginning of just like how things get amped up, next level, and then all of a sudden you're in that rock bottom. Everything is chaotic because whatever that dynamic, that pattern, that your soul, and we're going into the soul here. The soul's like, this doesn't feel in alignment, but we keep going into it. Okay. When it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and there's no escape, that's when we know, all right, time to do some inner work. And this is where we do the self-exploration. We do the deep dives. We go into why we need these boundaries, why we maybe need to reevaluate my relationships, who needs to go, who do I need to invite in? What am I asking the universe to create consciously with purpose? And the boundary is such a great tool. So I think the boundary is a great tool of how to create the better life that we want, the more loving life, the more grounded life.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And I'm going to give you a quick little dialogue for what a boundary sounds like, because a lot of us think like a boundary can sometimes sound or be portrayed as like an ultimatum. Okay. And it doesn't have to be an ultimatum when you stand in the ownership of knowing that this is your line. Okay. But it would be like saying to your partner, I'll give you an example. What if your partner, and I had been cheated on in a relationship. What if your partner cheated on you in a relationship and like you decided to mend it, okay? And you're mending it, you're like, but you know what? It'd be safer for me to like not just sleep with you right away. I don't know who you slept with. We were in this committed relationship. I don't know who you slept with. A good way to put up a boundary there would be something along the lines of this. I know we're working towards this. This is something that we're working towards, and I believe we can get there. However, once you get tested and your test is clear, we can start engaging in that type of intimacy again. Assuming you've done all the emotional pieces that come before that as well, right? That are oftentimes needed. But the thing is, that was my boundary. I'm not saying if you, when you, I'm like, when, right? Like, I'm not like questioning myself in it or like, oh, will you meet my circumstance? No, I'm honoring and loving myself in that exchange. I'm holding my boundary in my sacred energy for that exchange. So now let's go further. A dynamic that oftentimes appears between the narcissist and the empath, or even just everyday general relationships. Okay. Someone messes up, but they keep messing up on purpose, or not on purpose, rather, usually it's on accident, right? But they could be on purpose if they're a button pusher, instigator. Notice that I giggle because sometimes
and whether you're aware of it or not.
Sometimes I'm aware of it, that I'm a button pusher, guys. It's not pretty. Okay. I like learning to love myself.
I know. And sometimes the button pushing is like a compulsion. Like, you shouldn't be doing it, but for some reason we just keep going. I know. I'm going to be honest there.
Yeah. See, we're not perfect. We're heartful beings. Okay. Learning to bring it forward on authenticity. So here's the thing, my friends, when someone is apologetic to you, the true apology is in the behavioral change.
Yes. Say that again.
Okay. I'll reword it even.
Yeah.
When someone has messed up and they are apologetic towards you, the true apology is the change in the behavior.
Yes.
Because if this person or this individual continues to behave the same way, then they have lost that respect that they're going to continue to like honor your boundary.
And let's be honest too, that maybe is showing that they haven't actually done the full inner work needed to make the behavioral change. And let me just say this, it is not any of our responsibility to hold someone's hand as they're going through it. This is for partners. This is honestly for children too. Let me talk about this because it's coming up. I'm pregnant and I have a 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and she's already experiencing some trauma of like, oh no, another baby's coming. Okay. I'm having to learn how to navigate of holding the space for her to feel what she's feeling at that time and not going in and trying to fix it or tell her not to cry or not to be upset or not to be overly happy or whatever it may look like. Okay. And this is just another example of like holding space for somebody as they're going through it, as opposed to like fixing.
Yeah.
Okay. Because she's in the process of processing all of it. And her little 3-year-old head is already going all over the place of like, what does this mean for me? And, she's only 3, as some of us would say, but she's, very intuitive and intelligent and emotionally aware for her age too. So just holding the space for her. And, as a parent, sure, it's my responsibility to make sure she's safe and loved and secure, but I'm also trying to make a generational change and allowing her to express herself. Okay. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes sense. And I want you to think about this because you're talking about your 3 or 4-year-old. Okay. We are taught the words, I'm sorry, at that age and a little bit younger, but we're just taught the words. So even if you yourself or someone, or if you yourself are the person who keeps pushing the button or keeps making a behavioral decision that is a detriment to your relationship, and you hear yourself saying, I'm sorry, quite a bit, give yourself some grace as well, because this is new to you. And sometimes you may not be willing to do the work until someone holds you accountable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So listen to those dynamics, my friends, because we're literally talking about the codependent and the enabler. Like it's like a seesaw, right? Like we allow things to happen. Yeah, it's a cycle. And we're surprised. We're like almost shocked, pained, and surprised when it continues to happen. But you could honestly just give the boundary. You don't have to give it tons of emotion. You don't have to you don't have to basically self-sacrifice yourself energetically to give the boundary. You could just give the boundary of like, look, that's not cool with me. I honor that's not where you are. Maybe you don't have the capacity to do this or fit this or be my friend or be my lover or hold this place in my life. Because sometimes you have to take people for who they are.
Yes.
I would say most times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like another example of setting a boundary with even like a friend who's like invited you to go somewhere and you're just like, I don't really feel like it. Kind of like old me would make up an excuse to not hurt their feelings of why I don't want to do it. But the reality is it just didn't resonate with me, or my body and my mind is really calling for a quiet night home without guilt. Okay. So you can just simply even just say something to that friend like, oh, that sounds like a really great time. Thanks for thinking of me. But I actually really need to like be home tonight and just work on myself or recharge or whatever the word is.
Yeah.
But the key in like the setting of the boundary is you're putting your needs in the statement somewhere, your true authentic needs in the statement somewhere. Right.
Yeah. And not, so what honors you.
Yeah. You're putting yourself first and honoring where you're at. And so many of us even struggle with that without feeling the guilt and the shame that comes afterwards. Right. Like, oh, what if or the FOMO, okay, the fear of missing out, doing some work around that. But when your body is like, man, I really want to stay home, but they invited me, I should just go. And then you end up having a horrible time or you hurt or whatever. It's a good reminder of like, oh, kind of should have listened to myself first there for a second, Yeah.
And you're going to have the experience that you decided you're going to have with your intentions. Right. So all of that connects. And, when it comes to, loving yourself, your relationships, we're really talking about deepening that relationship with self.
Yeah.
Okay. Deepening it with self. And when you have that beautiful little cocoon for yourself, you're growing to be so much more beautiful, so much more expansive. There's a very, very beautiful process that happens when the soul expands, guys. because things can't penetrate it the same way.
Mm-mm.
The external won't penetrate it, but you are the one that has to build the cocoon. And I'm not talking about like go into your cave, hide, stay away, isolate from people. I'm sorry, friends, you incarnated with 8 billion other people. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
but I do want to say
Yeah.
sometimes I need to cocoon myself because
Yeah.
the world is insane and
I do
sometimes things get
too.
too much. There is a beauty
Yeah.
in the cocooning.
Yeah, I'm a Cancer. So for me to like retrieve to my little crab shell is important at moments, right?
Yeah.
Especially like I'm hyper social. I love strangers. It's the funnest thing to me, strangers. You never know what you're gonna get. It's like going to a slot machine and you're like, oh, and then surprise.
And I'm the opposite introverts out there. I'm with you. I don't know about too much about some strangers. You get a little bit of both with us.
You get both. You get the dichotomy. But sometimes I have to retrieve too to do my own processing and my healing. So there's a balance in all things for each individual and unique person. But what I'm getting at is this, friend. Honor yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to walk on eggshells. With my first husband, you like how I say my first husband? Who knows how many come? With my first husband, there were so many times I didn't honor myself. I didn't honor my voice. I didn't honor what I wanted. I didn't show up to do things in a way that I felt like were honoring me. I was so scared of losing the relationship, of being abandoned because I had trauma around that from my dad leaving when I was a kid, that I was walking on eggshells most times. I would say that I really blew up, like the big expansive blow up, like 4 times in like 16 years or something. Okay. And I wasn't honoring myself when really I can see today, if I had been honoring myself, perhaps there would have been more growth, because there would be conversations that would ignite. There would be triggers that would happen from me speaking my truth. So the thing is, we try to avoid conflict so much. We get into such states of avoidance that we don't honor ourselves to kind of self-preserve and stay safe. But the truth is, we're all here to grow. That's one thing like all of us have in common is growth.
Yeah. There's this idea that we have to preserve, stay loyal, keep the peace. And there's like, we've mentioned this before, like the culture with women, or if you came from a religious home, or all of these belief systems that have been hardwired. That's a great way to kind of start doing some of your inner work. Okay. So maybe we can talk about more examples of what that may look like. I know for me, what it meant to do the work wasn't just consciously spitting out the story. It was going deeper than just saying, look what this person did to me my whole life. Can you believe it? Like, I'm the victim here. Why can't you see it? It wasn't until I really started to change my perspective of how does this serve me and what is this showing me? And that is when I signed up to do mentoring with our mentor, that she really pushed me to take it to the next level, to take it like, what is this? What do you want to change? And what is it that you want? Okay. Then setting the boundaries was so much easier because it was integrated. Like the work I had done had integrated to who I was becoming and who I had become, that when I was setting the boundaries or just how I was showing up in the world, it was one and the same. It was effortlessly done.
Yeah.
It was just, this is what I got going on. This is who I am. This is what I want to do now. And, I don't have to explain myself to anybody else that this is just what I'm doing, know, but when I was still in a place of being really, insecure, some people out there may be like, I didn't think you were that insecure. I was very insecure. I didn't have a lot of self-worth. I was following a script for most of my life. Okay. And I got really good at the masks and like walking through what I needed to do at the time. But when I really addressed my self-worth, insecurities, how I loved myself, how I showed up and loved others, the boundaries are effortlessly done. Period.
Yeah.
So what does the work look like for you as we kind of wind down a little bit?
I'll give you a very specific example that has led to one level of freedom to another, to another, to another. And this was in February, right? I think we're like almost April now or something. We're in April. We don't usually give dates, but we're giving up. Okay. So the idea being this, back then there was a storm that happened and things were shut down and my partner was home from work and I have been juggling a few projects willingly, inspirationally juggling a few things. And I told him, listen, I have this 15-minute break to have lunch. Would you like to have lunch with me? Will you spend some time with me? And I come to my cat to the couch. I'm like getting real cozy by him and like getting my food ready. And he stares at his phone for the next 15 minutes. My friends, other female friends or feminine energy friends out there who would go through this, I want you to just think about what your reaction would be. Okay. You got one? You got it? Okay.
Oh yeah.
My old reaction would have been like anger, fire. It's like you don't, right? Like a hamster wheel of emotions and like cages and like chaos, right? Anger fueled with self-hate, self-loathing. But fast forward some years, I've done a lot of work, right? I sat there and just felt the depths of pain of being ignored and felt the depths of pain of neglect and just quietly asked myself, what is this about? And when I did, I wasn't super excited about what I discovered, but I knew that it would lead to more freedom. It was very much about feeling neglected as a child, being ignored as a child, feeling like my parents' energy and priorities went to other circumstances and jobs and so on. A lot of people out there can relate to this because it's part of our human scenarios and predicaments that we find ourselves in. So I didn't say anything to him right away because I immediately started doing my work on the couch of identifying where this came from. And a couple of days later, I did tell him, though, listen, something triggered me. This is my story. Something triggered me really badly that happened between you and I. And I told him, so I knew that my work around this would start showing up repeatedly for at least another few weeks. And in this case, it has now been a couple of months. Okay. I finally had some breakthrough. I don't know to what degree yet, because obviously levels of it will continue to show up. But I decided to start acknowledging myself more. I started to start showing up for myself more. I started eating meals more regularly, running to the restroom like before I'm at that panic mode. I started doing things for myself in a different way. And when I started to, I noticed that his behaviors have changed some. And I noticed if even the behaviors that haven't changed related to that attention and neglect and time investment, it didn't trigger me as much because I could recognize that this is part of the universe's way of showing me this is where you have not done more work. This is the next level. This is the next layer to that onion that we hear about in these spiritual circles so much. That being the case, friends, I had to do a lot of work, and I'm going to do a little bit of work live right now if you're good with that. And it's the Ho'oponopono prayer. Joe Vitale talks about this a lot. It's a Hawaiian prayer that was used to really understand the mirroring that the environment or the external or the family or the people or the relationships show you. And it's a prayer of forgiveness. And it goes like this. It goes, I am sorry that there is something in me that sees this in you. And I'm saying this to my partner right now. Please forgive me because I have blocked my ability to see you as my higher self does. Thank you for guiding me to my own healing. I love you for giving me the opportunity to become a greater expression of who I really am. And it feels so much better on the other side because you have to take this level of accountability and ownership of knowing that these things, these triggers, these scenarios, these dichotomies that happen are all on purpose to keep showing you the way back to self.
Janet, damn. That's all I got to say. Thank you for being so vulnerable with everybody. Because that's what it's all about. Okay. That was a beautiful live example of doing the work. And I want to kind of recap. There was like 3 things that were really potent that you just showed me of what it means when you're doing the work. You got the trigger, right? Then you identified where the trigger came from, but you didn't stop there. This happened to me as a child. You didn't stay in the story. You didn't just stay in like, can you believe he's doing this? You asked further, what else? What else are you showing me? And then you came to the most powerful dynamic that you weren't honoring yourself. And that, everyone, is like, I think, the whole next level of the healing, and then you get to see the evidence show up in your life of like the dynamics change without you really even doing much work with the person. And that is what I've experienced time and time again, as I've now taken a more holistic approach to my own personal healing, where I wasn't just sitting, in the chair, in the story loop, and not going further. So friends out there, Janet just did this beautifully within seconds on her own. This is also with years of her practicing, having the right person be the guide for her. So find the guide, find the teacher, find the inspiration. But Janet, that was just like insane, of like how much depth you can bring to a situation that triggers all of us. Because I know I get enraged when the phone comes out sometimes. And now, thank you, because I also needed to hear that, because also everyone, who's listening, what somebody brings to the table is usually for the collective. And I do, it's amazing when I'm doing like live card readings or I'm doing it live channeling, because the message is always for the best and highest good of the whole. So thank you for sharing that, because now you've given me some perspective on my trigger of when my husband is on his phone the whole time. Your brother.
Yeah. And you'll notice I'm still crying, right? Like it's still coming, because the purge is real and the integration is real. And then guys, oh my God, I'm really like about to start sobbing. Like, it's really beautiful when you can transition into knowing that the villains or the bad guys or the ones that you love so much are here to just keep showing you aspects of yourself that you have not healed. Mm-hmm. You get into such a great state of gratitude and you're like, holy shit, this is perfect.
Yes.
It's all so perfect. And it's really neat when you can start going there, because you feel a sense of freedom. Mm-hmm. and liberty, and you were able to take your power back. But before that, guys, oh my God, being stuck in the shittiest part of it just sucks. Because you can get on the loop for 40 years if you want. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or you can just turn the mirror around. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a great conversation today. It's given me a lot to think about. It's given me some really good journaling prompts, I have to say, as I'm going to leave here today with you. Amazing, Janet, for being so vulnerable with us and like sharing a true moment of healing relationship. So sticking with the relationship, sticking with the ownership, and then sticking with the boundary. And the boundary that you're learning how to set is with yourself, with more like authentic downtime, of more honoring what you need when you need your biological needs, food, bathroom, but also like maybe start carving out time in the day where you give yourself a 20-minute, 30-minute freebie slot is what I'm also hearing for you, would be a great way, because we live by our schedules, right? Moms out there, some of us moms out there who are scheduled oriented people. But I may need to start doing that too. Like, all right, I'm going to have a solid lunch hour, even though I work from home in front of this desk, the computer, and I'm not really leaving the house much, But if I schedule myself a lunch break, I feel like that would be really beneficial for me. So much to learn from. Thank you, Janet. It was amazing. We'll see you guys on the next episode and kind of see where this theme of relationship healing takes us next.
Bye, friends.
Bye, everyone. If you liked what you heard today and want to see more about our offerings and gifts, please join our email list at heartfulbeings.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Heartful Beings.
Please note that all of our perspectives and views of the following content are ours and aren't necessarily a substitute to our holistic views and approaches to healing. Both of us believe in the numerous support tools available to all, which include and are not limited to therapy, mental health treatment, medical prescription, and other types of traditional or alternative healthcare.